Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corkin here. I'm the host of this show, and check out some of our past episodes. We've got some great episodes with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies. Check out episodes with Netflix and Kinko's and YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And this is part of our Entrepreneurs Organization Global Leadership Conference series. The Global Leadership Conference, or GLC, is a conference for emerging business leaders. It's put on by Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, each year. I'm a member of EO, as is my guest here today, Corey Veverka, and we'll be attending this year's event. And we created this series to highlight this particular conference, which will be in person and virtual in Washington, D.C., April 23rd to 26th, 2022, and also going to have a portion of it in Barcelona, Spain. And it's open to EO members worldwide. So if you want to learn more about that, go to eonetwork.org, or you can also Google EO Global Leadership Conference, and you can learn more about it. And my guest here today is Corey Veverka. He's a principal and serves as president of Total Validation Services, aka TVS, which since 1992 has worked with many of the world's leading biopharmaceutical companies, helping them with regulatory compliance solutions. He's also been a member of EO San Francisco since 2016 and has held numerous leadership roles, including as president of the chapter between 2020 and 2021. He was a pandemic president who benefited from that crisis coming in place. And before we get into this, of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. You can go to rise25media.com to learn more about it. All right, Corey, thanks so much for your time here today. And you've got this story that I wanted to start with about your first entrepreneurial venture. I love hearing first entrepreneurial venture stories, whether it's 6 years old and doing a lemonade stand with your dad out on your parents' lawn. For you, it involved a patent in the Olympics, and it was right after college. So tell us the story.
Yeah, so growing up, grew up with literally nothing. I mean, we were on assisted living. And I worked, my mother though was an academic, so always had instilled this sense of learning and making sure that the academics were taken care of. So I got into engineering, went into engineering as into college, went to Villanova University. I was also an athlete, so I was a rower. So by the time it got to my senior year, we had to do our senior design project. So I wanted to merge those two things with engineering and sports. So I came up with an idea to make boats go faster, make cruise shells go faster. I submitted my senior design project, which was a fairing for a boat shell, reduce wind drag on just like a shell on top of an 18-wheeler. I put that on the front of a boat. Did all the design work, showed that it would be effective. I actually submitted that to the U.S. Olympic Committee as a design in a design contest that the U.S. Olympic Committee put on. Went to Colorado Springs, presented on it, won the competition. Hey, pretty cool. Got $1,500. I was like, I'm feeling good. I thought, well, I should try to take this to the next step. So I filed for a patent on it. I got a patent. I got some funding from a relative to kind of start the business, which funded the patent application. So started getting the business things in order. And right at this time, it was the 1996 Olympics. And I got a call from the head coach of the U.S. Olympic team, men's head coach. And he said, hey, I saw your design in a newsletter about this design competition. He said, hey, I'm doing the exact same thing. I don't want to take your patent. This is all your IP, but would you mind collaborating and sharing your experiences with my designer? So I collaborated with a very established boat company. We modified the design, and coming into the 1996 Olympics, we were going to spring it in the finals of the Olympics. So, because there was a little bit of gray area about whether it was legal or not. There was nothing against it. We'll just say there's nothing against the rules.
So it's like they hadn't anticipated it.
Exactly.
Got it.
So the head coach wanted to just use it in the finals. So I go down to Atlanta. I'm just buzzing, waiting for the finals to come up. Meanwhile, in one of the preliminary rounds, the Japanese crew team, a guy puts on a turtle shell on his back, similar idea to reduce wind drag. They let the guy go, but then they say, like, from that point on, they had this big meeting. It was a big kerfuffle. Nothing aerodynamic can be added to the boat.
Oh, no.
So in one fell swoop, the governing body of rowing, FISA, killed my idea. Nothing.
Killed the idea, killed the business, all of that.
All of it
geez.
done.
Oh, man.
But that was my first entrepreneurial experience, and just moved on from that.
It kind of taught you the importance of there being one central authority that can determine whether your business thrives or fails.
Exactly.
I thought that was the year of the bombing in Atlanta. I thought you were going to say the bombing happened and that affected things.
No, that we were away from that, but that it was a little scary, certainly.
Yeah. So, what a great story. So, but you joined TVS in 2002 and you worked your way up into leadership and you ended up buying out the business and that, you end up as an entrepreneur, as a business owner through that. Tell us that story.
Yeah. So, when I first joined TVS, I got recruited away from a larger company to TVS, which at the time was about 20 people or so, with kind of with anticipation that I would move into leadership and maybe take over one day. And it took much longer than expected, just because the way the owner, he didn't want to hold a note. He didn't want to, he wanted to have a clean break. And so we always struggled with how to finance the acquisition. And one day I'm just listening on the radio, and I hear a bank say, "Hey, we do SBA loans for business acquisition." Oh, okay. So I called him up and and I told him the circumstances, showed him some preliminary numbers. It took 2 years, but we finally consummated a deal that was SBA funded. And as of today, I am in the black on that note, and it's all worked out.
Nice. So, what was that transition like going from, in leadership at a company to ownership of the company? I know you joined EO not too long later, which probably was helpful as you are now the guy who's responsible for everything.
Yeah. EO was certainly instrumental. I didn't grow up as an entrepreneur. I had my kind of taste of entrepreneurship, but I had never pictured myself as a business owner growing up. I was more interested in the engineering side of things growing up, but so I hadn't learned a lot of the business side. I had an engineering degree coming out of school, right? So certainly a lot of the connections that I made where I learned a lot of the leadership skills, which are different than managerial skills, right? So being a leader is a lot of those skills that I learned about being a leader came from EO. So that's why EO will forever have a place in my heart, and I so much appreciate the unique skills and approaches that I've learned from EO about leading other leaders and growing a business.
Yeah. And for you, one of the biggest challenges you've had since you've been the owner was going into the pandemic, which what's interesting too is being president of the chapter at the same time. I've interviewed a few others who were president of their chapters while their business suffered some kind of calamity or major challenge. And they end up in this feeling of kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but on the one hand, they're supposed to be leading this organization of thriving entrepreneurs. On the other hand, their business is, might be challenging and or experiencing challenges, and so it's hard for them to come clean with that. To say to everyone like, I'm struggling here. What was that like for you?
So luckily, my business was we had a little bit of in the summer of 2020, as things were really starting to hit hard. We had a little bit of concern and having problems placing people because our business is very much hands-on. We have to have our staff on site. But once we figured out a few of those things over the summer, my business was doing okay just because of the macro aspects of the pharmaceutical world and biopharmaceutical world. There was money pouring in to help with vaccine production.
So the work was still
right
there. So it wasn't like restaurants or something where where your clients were shut down and therefore there's no work for you.
Right. So there were adjustments that had to be made, but the business was doing well. So that gave me a little bit of space to devote to EO and leading the chapter, because there were so many entrepreneurs in our chapter that were just devastated, going to zero. Right.
Yeah.
So helping put in place the structures to support the chapter was very gratifying for me, and allowed me to give back for everything that EO has given me. And got me to the place. Yeah.
And why did you step up and decide to be president? What motivated that?
Well, I admired other leaders within EO. I admired their approach. I admired how they talked to people, how they led, and I wanted to take that same journey myself. So stepping up year after year, being on the board for a while, and following other chapter presidents that I've had and that I had before me, I admired them and I wanted to be like them. So I thought, well, why not go through the same process that they did and see where that takes me? And I was right. I think I've grown in my leadership skills, and I want to continue to grow in my style and continue to give back to EO.
That's literally how I ended up going to law school, was working in politics and seeing other lawyers and admiring how they would defeat me in any verbal argument and being like, maybe I should go to law school. So, but I think you ended up with the better gig, becoming president of your chapter. So you attended Global Leadership Conference for the first time in Frankfurt, Germany. You'd been a member of EO for 7 or 8 months at that point. Mm-hmm. What was that introduction like when you first went to GLC?
So I hadn't met a lot of EOers outside of my chapter, and that was the first time that I got to experience a worldwide event from EO. And I was having fun throughout the first parts of GLC. I learned a lot about being a communications director. That was essentially what I went to GLC for, was Marcoms. So I learned a lot about how to do that, and I met a lot of interesting people. But I think that the one thing that I really found, like, okay, these are my people, is we had an Oktoberfest that they had set up in Frankfurt, Germany, and we had 1,500 people packed into this little tent. Like, we couldn't do this today, right? 1,500 people, and we're all dancing on top of the skinny tables. Mm-hmm. And just drinking beer and hanging out with people from all sorts of other chapters. It was just like, these are my people. These are good people that I'm going to learn a lot from and have a lot of fun with.
It's so much fun. I went to one Oktoberfest in Munich after college, and super fun. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't imagine doing it with masks and everything. That would be fantastic.
Right.
You also went to Toronto. You went to Macau. Macau had more of a structured learning component to it. The conference had evolved a little bit in addition to chapter leadership training for chapter officers. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, by that time, they had switched things up a little bit in adding some takeaway, some practical takeaway for everybody that attends GLC in a more structured way. And Pascal Finnerette, who was a part of Singularity University at that time, was a futurist thinker, and he gave these amazing talks and brought in a whole bunch of people that talked about how quickly things are changing, how quickly technology is changing, and how we need to be prepared for that rate of change in everything that we do, whether it's technology, whether it's the speed of how business runs. Everything changes very quickly, and so it really started to change my mind and refocus my business, which is regulatory compliance in pharmaceutical, which moves pretty slow, but by nature. But
the industry you're in, biopharmaceuticals, is on the bleeding edge, right? I mean, developing the next generation of pharmaceuticals and medicines that are helping. So in a sense, you're already in an industry that's pretty cutting edge.
It is. It is. What I realized out of that to your exact point, what I realized is that things are changing faster than I even realized. Because I was in the day to day, you focus on kind of what's in front of you, but then to your point, I'm realizing that cell therapy and gene therapy applications are really moving quickly, and so adjusting our company's capabilities to be able to support those new technologies and looking forward a little bit more, I think has positioned TVS, our company, to be much more prepared and to add more value to our clients.
What would you say to someone in EO who's considering attending GLC?
I would say you're going to meet amazing people. You're going to have fun. It's going to put you outside of your comfort zone, maybe, and that's a good thing. You're going to learn a lot about what your role is as a chapter director, and you're going to become a better leader by going to GLC.
Great. Corey, thanks so much for your time. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Corey Veverka is my LinkedIn profile. Also at my website, www.tbsinc.com, and you'll find all about me.
Excellent, Corey. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.